The two options I had shown him, I was like, oh man, I solved this puzzle brilliantly. Yeah. Like, how can you not see that?
Yeah, exactly.
How do you guys handle in your firms if there's a mistake made and you have to own up on it? And every consultant does it. We talked about it earlier. I mean, Dick Eisenbart talked about a $25,000 flight dishwasher at one point that was the wrong way. That they had to fix, and they got it fixed, and they used their connections and things to get it done well, and to get it done easily and cheaply. But how do you guys then make sure that you'll never do it again? You're going to look at it because you're conscious of it, but how do you tell others in your firm, or do you tell others in your firm to be on the lookout?
We absolutely do. Like, if somebody makes a mistake, we want everybody to be aware of it, because it's generally something that could happen again, right? Mm-hmm. And then we take steps to change maybe basic spec language or something in the process that led up to that, so then it can't be duplicated again.
I think it's communication and training. I mean, I feel like, for me, junior members of the team joining in on those conversations as early as possible with clients, just to, help educate them. And so have that conversation of like, hey, next time let's put a hand, like I learned from my project 5 years ago, you got to put a hand sink here too, and then we, we'll do internal, what we call RICA universities, where different team members will just present on different topics. Some of them related to issues in the field and kind of lessons that we've learned. And then as a principal team, just really making it okay to talk about it. This is what happened. Here's an E&O that we have to, let's discuss it, and what we did right, what we could have done better, and really how do we communicate with the client through the difficult time.
Where do you find your biggest education comes from? Meaning, like, is it in the field when you're doing punch lists or doing walkthroughs? Is that where you learn the most, or is it when you're drawing and getting feedback, or is it both? I mean, I don't know myself, so.
I think it's when the operators had some time to work in the space and you get their feedback. And walking the space helps a lot, going through the punch and seeing, this is how it looks in person. We've been looking at it in 2D and 3D the whole time. Here's what it actually comes out to. And then being able to get that feedback from the operator goes really far in determining, does it actually work?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot of education as well, internal education. When we have punch lists for larger projects, in our Monday morning meetings, someone will do a punch list review and do a slideshow and show photos. And really, the biggest takeaway from that is always the lessons learned. Either what things that happen on the project that were out of our control, or that were, that we could have tried to control, or how we could do it differently. And I think you're right. I think our specifications have evolved from those lessons learned. Certainly our Revit drawing standards and standard details have really, they were born out of those kinds of, mistakes that have happened over the years. Okay, how can we prevent this from happening in the future?
So as a consultant, and I say you draw it, as you're drawing it, you're trying to figure out what piece of equipment is going to work best. You draw it, then you get to the construction site, then you get to the final punch list and everything. There's a lot more players than just you as a consultant, obviously. So tell me what your relationship and how important they are, what they're like, and then how important they are with the rep groups, the dealers, the construction crews, whoever else is going to be, the service agents, whatever. Tell me, I want to go around the table to get everybody's perspective on this, how your relationships are and what they mean to you. We'll start with you, Eric.
Wow. Well, I think coming up from the dealer world, I have that perspective. So I understand it's one thing for us to, complete our bid documents and send them out, and then, wait for submittals to start coming in and handling the CA. But really, that for a dealer, that's the tough work, right? I mean, you're in the field, you're coordinating with the trades, and there's so much that's involved, and so much that can go wrong, and also having to juggle all the lead time issues we're dealing with, and yes. on big projects, they're really, for a dealer, it's really low margin. It's really low margin work, so you cannot make a mistake. So that's a tough one. But my relationship with manufacturers and with rep groups, I think we're blessed in our area to have really good rep groups. Really helpful people. Very knowledgeable, and also over time, rep groups change manufacturers, and so I think that gives them a perspective too, because I used to rep this line, but now I'm repping a different manufacturer's equipment. So I think they can be a little bit more honest about things. It's less bashing the competitor because the competitor is their old line, which they've been telling me for 5 years. It was the best, the bee's knees. But I got this now. But no, I like it when they're able to bring some innovative things to the table. Because if you think about it, there's a lot of things that haven't changed over the last 30, 40 years. A 6-burner range is a 6-burner range, right? There's not that much different that's happened. I mean, sure, there's some
6-burner induction range.
Well, there you go.
It's a little different.
Well, that's true, and there aren't that many of those yet either. But I mean, I'm sure they're coming. But I truly do appreciate with manufacturers that are on the cutting edge and trying to move the industry forward. As far as electronics, or like you said, different kind of technologies. I think that's really that's who's going to bring us to in the future. As the question of what's going to look in 5 years. Well, I think it kind of comes down to what the manufacturers are doing, and those engineers, and what they're cooking up. And
I think it's really important to have a good relationship with the manufacturers and the manufacturers' reps, and making sure that you get the communication and responsiveness is there. You need to be able to rely on the manufacturers to provide you with accurate information, and we work closely with them. And
that's it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be pretty blunt on this one. There is good reps and there's bad reps. A good rep or a bad rep can make or break whether I'll specify their equipment. And that comes down to back-end support, right? If I put piece A of equipment into a project and something happens to that, and I don't have someone to call, and that client's calling me, and that rep doesn't follow up or doesn't provide the support I need or whatever, I will not specify that. And that comes down to the relationships with the particular rep firms, who calls on us regularly, who provides us with the information, so they're a conduit from the manufacturer to us. Yeah. And I think that's a really important relationship. The dealer side, dealers, consultants, always kind of been adversarial, but that's getting better, I feel, because we have to work together to give a good project to a client. And the more we communicate with that dealer, the more we can pick up the phone and call each other if there's an issue or something we need to discuss, the better that's going to be for our end user and for the client. And it can only make a project better to keep that line of communication open.
Joe?
So, I mean, I think I agree with everything been said, and I could probably talk KC dealer, that interaction for hours, but I want to move away from that and move to architects and engineers, because I think at the end of the day, our internal within the industry relationships have to be solid. That's one of the things that makes us very, stable, and they're our backbone, right? But the reality is the other side of this is actually what helps bring us projects. So relationships with the architects. Another example is mechanical engineers. I mean, if we're not working closely with mechanical engineers throughout the project and even sometimes outside of projects, and when you help somebody, when it's reciprocity. It's a reciprocity-based thought process. I'm giving you information that I have with no expectation of a reciprocation on that. But the human is sort of like, as human beings, we all feel like we have to return that favor, right? It's like there's a debt. And so what I've tried to do is with especially plumbing engineers and mechanical engineers, make sure they have my contact information. And if they're working on another project and they got a hood problem or they've got something going on that they're curious about, call me up. And then what that leads to down the road has been really amazing. Now again, small sample size, 7 years. But when I get those phone calls, I feel, it also makes me feel good because clearly I've done something to make them feel like I bring value, right? And so it is reciprocal. And I think those are, as a professional, I think those are the types of moments where you're yeah, okay, cool, cashing the check is great. But at the end of the day, I'm not passionate about the check hitting the bank account. I'm passionate about solving that problem in that moment.
So, one of the things for me when we have new folks coming into our office that I really want them to be able to do is to be proactive on a project. It's, definitely we can all be reactive. As questions come up, we can answer them. But such a big part of our role is helping everybody anticipate what they should be asking and what they should be doing and what they should be looking at. At least I feel like in a lot of ways we're stewards of food service. So kind of what you were saying a bit, Joe. And so to me that relates to the relationship with the architects and the engineers, and then also to some degree the reps. But with when it comes to the engineers, we need to ask the questions. We need to bring things up to them because they don't understand what we do. Yeah. And so that's a really important piece. Instead of just saying, here's my information, call me when you have a question, they don't even know what questions to ask. So helping them walk through, hey, we need to talk about hoods. Like this is a real gray area. We need to understand and be on the same page, especially if we want the whole HVAC system to run efficiently. Yeah. Let's talk about that. Let's look at this. And I guess I would say a lot of ways too with the manufacturers and the reps. I mean, definitely, I feel like you hit the nail on the head with if they're not going to support me when there's an issue, it's really hard. I feel like that relationship's a little bit broken. Sure. So if I can be a little proactive in the relationship of getting to know them a little bit more, setting up trainings that help with the rest of the team, then hopefully that relationship can come through and we'll be there when we're through construction.
You bring up a great topic because inevitably this probably happens once every couple weeks for me at headquarters. Being the executive director, a new manufacturer member, that's somebody that's taken over for somebody else, or a new rep group will call me and say, I'm new to FCSI, can you give me a crash course on how it is the best way to get in front of the consultants? And I've done it enough years that I think I know a fairly good amount of how to do it, and I never take off the emphasis of it's a relationship and you better have it, because if you don't bother. Don't come to the conference and sit in the corner and talk to a couple other allied members and then complain that you don't get any specs, because if you're not talking to the consultants, it's not going to happen. So kind of what you just talked about, real quickly around the table, tell me the way you prefer a manufacturer or a manufacturer's rep, and you personally or your firm or both, how you like to get that information, because they're always asking that question to me. So I know that they're watching this and would love to know, and then I can take less phone calls. So no, but in all honesty, I mean it is the number one question I get immediately. Or if somebody's never been to one of our conferences, like here in Montreal this week, I probably fielded 5 calls from people that have never been to one of our conferences. Hey, what do I expect? How do I get in front of the consultants? How do I network with them? What's the best way? So real quickly, we'll start with you. We don't have you go last all the time. We'll have Tara start you off. What do you or what does Rika prefer as far as the communication with the manufacturer and the rep group?
I think we're open to folks reaching out to us, and that's happened pretty frequently. We have somebody in-house who helps manage that, sort of appoint a liaison in a way that will set up meetings and make sure that happens so that folks have a chance to meet the team. But I can get it. I feel like we might be an intimidating group to a manufacturer or a rep, but in all honesty, all of us are saying how critical that relationship is, and how to know the innovation, to know the equipment, and just to have a partner in the process that, we're not as intimidating as it might seem. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call us. We're interested.
Yeah. Joe?
It's interesting. I feel like sometimes I'm almost ignored, especially by the rep groups. Even when I moved to just outside Boise, Idaho, I don't know hardly any of the rep groups in the Idaho region at all, barely. a couple of them. I think for me, don't try and sell us. We're not buying equipment, right? Like we're specifying equipment. Try and educate us. Try and give us information. Try and, and again, I think there's a fine line between that coming across as salesy versus that coming across as educational or informational. And I think that's the biggest mistake. Yeah. And then I agree to do the webinar, I agree to go and do the whatever it is, and then it's a old school sales slide deck that you're using with all the dealers too. Like, be smart about who you're talking to. And I think that's the biggest misstep. And I'm sure all these guys can attest, like, name the last webinar that you were on in the last even 6 months, and they still all feel to me very salesy. Like, oh, we've got this new widget that just came out and we want to sell you all about it. And I don't want to be sold all about it. I want to be educated on how it actually works and why it may improve what I'm doing.
Speaking of webinars, I think we're all really sick of those. So come to my office and see me is a big one. And I think consistency is another one. We've had individuals that, they stop in once a year and they give you their sales pitch and then they're like, what jobs do you have that you can specify us on? Not a good approach, right? That's not how we want to do it. The ones that manufacturers and reps that are good are consistently calling on us if they have something new to show us, innovative, they bring it. And most of the time we'll sit and talk for a half hour about their family, how things are going. Right. It becomes more personal than just the rep and consultant relationship or manufacturer and consultant relationship. And we've become friends over the years. And so we'll have that, half hour conversation about catching up in life and everything. And then we'll just, slowly work into what they have to offer and what's new and innovative and educating us on their equipment. And
are you texting with your favorite rep firms almost on a regular basis?
Oh, I get texts from them. Some of them came to my wedding.
That's right. And I think Wade, to just hammer that point home. I mean, the relationship, that's the key. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, you're looking for a partner in your business, not sales rep. What about you?
Yeah, same thing. We look for that initial relationship to start to happen at an in-person meeting, to get our stuff established, and then if we see their face every once in a while, they send us email updates on what products they're offering and anything that they want to share with us. We distribute that through the rest of the office. And
I think for me, it's sort of the after sale relationship. Mm-hmm. After that product is there, stand behind it, be the problem solver, because inevitably something's going to go wrong at some point, and you need to take care of it. Yeah. And, like you said, I don't want to be the one fielding those phone calls from the operator saying, why isn't this working? And I can't get a hold of anybody. And I think that's the important thing. Mm-hmm. The other big pet peeve I have with a few rep groups is reaching out to them about, something specific, one of their lines, and just looking for information on it. And then getting back an email or whatever and flooding me with every other line that they have, just pushing everything else on me. Like, and I know you specify this all the time, but you know what? I have this and, and this and this and this and, all these different lines. It's like, no, let's keep it simple. And, if I'm interested in that, I'll reach out to you, don't be desperate.
You all kind of operate in certain segments of the industry, of the food service industry, and I want to get you, maybe it's out of your comfort zone a little bit. Tell me, is there a segment of the food service industry that you really don't do much of now or don't do at all even, that you would love to get into more in the future? It's like one of those, like, those projects look so cool and I never get to do those, or that they just look more challenging and I'd like to do those. Is there a certain segment that any of you like? Anybody can answer, but.
Well, our firm does a lot of segments, but I know me personally, they never give me any of the international resort projects. So I personally would really love to have more of those. I'm happy to go to small towns in the Midwest, but just making that pitch right now.
Yeah. My firm's never had an international resort project, so sign me up. I think resorts and casinos in general for me, but then also, honestly, higher ed. I think for me, and it's a direct translation, I think, from BNI, I think higher education would be a pretty easy one for us to move into. Ironically, I'm starting to do some restaurants, and I had not done a lot of restaurants, but recently we've got a couple that have come through.
Our one office in Seattle does quite a bit of casino work, but I personally haven't in the Midwest. They're not building casinos every day around our area. But I think that would be, I've done some casino work, but I think looking into that and doing more of that would be exciting. They tend to have a lot of money to spend, so you get to specify really cool stuff. So.
Ryan?
I know that there are segments that we stay away from, healthcare and prisons, and otherwise we have a pretty good representation in all the other market segments, and I think that we're pretty content where we're at.
Do you personally get to dabble in all of those?
Oh yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. So sports is what we are primarily known for, and I really enjoy working in that industry segment. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you get some
you get to see some
stuff, so.
cool stuff, and
Yeah.
I love it. So it's.
Yeah.
You're not dying to get into the prison work?
I can't say that I am.
Yeah. What about you?
And I think
Yeah, that industry's a little shaky.
Yeah.
and I thank everyone for staying away from the corrections work because I do a lot of corrections work. So that's great. If you ever want to collaborate, I can tell you my favorite, maximum security.
All joke aside, though, I've talked to people that do corrections works. You have to design a completely different way than anything else, because I never knew until I started doing this with FCSI, and I remember having a long conversation with Jim Peterson at the time, like maybe my second year being executive director, and him explaining the prison he was doing and all the extra steps he had to go through, not only to think about and design, but like what some of the stories were of some of the parts they were able to take off equipment to use as weapons, and I'm like, holy crap, that's a lot to worry about. So, all jokes aside, you've got a different thing.
Lock the sugar up, right?
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But you do a pretty good thing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we work in all market segments in our office, and I've pretty much dabbled in just about everything. But one thing that's brand new to us, and we're just in DD on a project now, is grocery stores.
Okay.
It's not something we've ever done, and we're doing one. We got asked by a mechanical engineer to work on one, and it's like, you know what? This is food service. It's not really that much different. It's just it's a lot of big production equipment. It's just there's band saws for sides of beef, but there's some little differences, but for the most part, it's like 90% the same. So why not? Let's expand and do something different, because I don't even know who's out there that does it. Other than big chains that probably do that for themselves internally. But why not? There seems to be a market for it.
How critical are you of your own work? Before you alluded to it, you went through your first one 20 times. I'm curious to find out from Tara how many times the last one you sent out you did before you sent it out.
Can I call myself a recovering perfectionist?
And not only when you're drawing it, but then you've done it and it's out there and you're in the walkthrough and you're doing the final punch list and you're like, not that you've admitted you made a mistake, but you're like, I probably could have done that better. Maybe I could, and maybe it's to points earlier, it may not have been your fault. Things change in the way we start from that drawing on a computer screen to the actual build out. I've done some walkthroughs with consultants over the years where you walk through and you're like, why is this conduit right through I was at a stadium and they'd done the custom concession stand. They cut it out for the soda machine, and then the builder came through and put the giant conduit right through the hole where the soda machine would go for all the soda lines. It's like, well, that's not gonna work, and that's not you guys' fault, obviously, when you get there.
At least it's not in the aisleway.
Yeah, that's true. But how critical are you of how many times, and then how often are you changing it before you have the confidence to send it, and then once you get it out and start being built, are you seeing it?
I think that's just learned. It's learned through experience, right? At least for me, when I started it was probably a lot more changing than where I am now. Because the truth is, it sometimes can be too disruptive, right? To both your internal team and the external team. You have to get to a point where you say, this is good, and I'm going to go with it, and see what happens. But we all make mistakes, and I feel like if somebody says they've never made a mistake on a project, they're not telling the truth. Like I've made mistakes on all of my projects. It's just, you have to take it as a lesson. And that's just kind of, being a consultant is, and you just have to say, okay, how can I grow and do better the next time?
Yeah. And I've heard in many conversations from the older consultants, nobody can design a perfect kitchen. No. Not at all, right? So no matter what you do, there's always going to be something, like you said. But there's still times, I think I got it locked in. I got all the pieces of the puzzle in there. I'll walk away from my desk. I'll come back. I'll sit down and go switch everything around, right? You start over again, and then so it's a process still, and yeah.
I think I'm the same way, and I'd like to send my kind of initial schematics to other more seasoned people in the office, because usually that very first design, I'll really have taken the time to think through the entire operation, front of house to back of house, the customer and the operator perspective.
Sometimes I get tunnel vision sometimes on a particular space that you'll be working on for a few hours, and then it really helps to just come back to that space a couple days later and just look at it one more time before you really think that you're comfortable with it, to make sure that there's no little tweaks that maybe you've thought of in between there.
Now, Joe, you don't get the luxury of that. So how many times are you doing something before you feel it's going to the client? I mean, I know you've got coworkers.
Well, I mean, we're collaborating on that, but I think what's interesting, post-project, I think, is a whole nother conversation, and I think it would be interesting to hear some perspectives on how these guys are documenting it and collaborating within the firm so that you never make that mistake again. I'm going to use a very close to the really relative timing right now on a project that just completed, sneeze guards, right? And what COVID has done to the thought process of buffet and how freaked out clients were. And our typical sneeze guard spec that we like to use is not adjustable. And so this particular client forced us to go adjustable, and we've got a major sneeze guard conflict in a corner, right? And nobody caught it, and it got built, and now the client's like, what are we gonna do? So what I'm curious about is how does everybody else then go back and document, like, hey, we fell on the sword, we made a mistake, right? Whatever, like what we've been talking about. But then how do you document that? How do you, and especially in the bigger firms, but like even in my own small firm, I'm struggling to figure out how to make sure we prevent a mistake like that again, other than just everybody's aware of it. We know it happened, right? Like next time we're gonna be, look at, maybe even like put everything fully in Revit and get it moving and just make sure that nothing actually hits, right? Like, I mean, how else do you, and that's just one example of things where you're like.
I'm usually my first design is usually my best one. It's like my gut instinct, right? And I'll send it off, and then somebody will, give me a response back and say, no, this is really good, but what if we did this? and it just blows my mind. I'm like, I couldn't have seen that perspective. And I hope to get there at some point, to be able to see how really you can, you could really flip it around, and like you said, and it could still remain just as efficient, but it's just a completely different angle, and it just continues to blow my mind. And I keep looking for that when I start to, okay, how can I do this differently right from the onset?
Well, thank you all for joining me today. It's been very informative and a lot of fun. That's it for this episode of Party of Five by FCSI The Americas. Until the next episode, cheers.